Right. At this time, I would like to kick things over to Dr. Jessica Treadway and her presentation for us.
Okay, so first I wanted to start by thanking the conference steering committee for the opportunity to share my research. As the moderator said, my name is Dr. Jessica Treadway, and the program I was enrolled in while at Walden was the Doctor of Business Administration program. And the title of my study is Trust Building Strategies Laboratory Managers Use to Cultivate the Engagement of Laboratory Employees. I also want to take this moment to acknowledge my chair, Dr. Gregory Washington, for his guidance and support throughout my doctoral journey. Next slide, please. So I want to start with my problem statement, and that is when employees lack meaningfulness in their work environment, it poses a significant threat to organizational success, especially when competing in the global business environment. Within the US workforce alone, disengagement among employees result in organizations losing well over 350 billion in revenue annually. The general business problem is a lack of trust in managers negatively affects employee engagement and ultimately impacts organizational performance, such as lower profitability. The specific business problem is that some laboratory managers lack strategies to build trusting relationships that cultivate the engagement of laboratory employees. So the focus of this qualitative multiple case study was to explore strategies laboratory managers use to build trusting relationships that cultivate the engagement of laboratory employees. And my target population consisted of 5 laboratory managers in various laboratory settings across the US who have successfully employed trust building strategies to cultivate the engagement of laboratory employees. So the implications for positive social change includes the potential to have fulfilled, engaged workforce. And having an engaged workforce serves as a driver for achieving and sustaining competitive advantage, leading to organizational success. And in response to increased financial and market success, organizational leaders could create employment opportunities, which may contribute to the economic welfare of those in surrounding communities. Next, I want to briefly discuss the significance of this study. So about 60% of employees worldwide report feelings of disengagement, as well as feeling unsupported and detached from their work and work environment. And the lack of employee engagement threatens the success of organizations. Engagement contributes to various organizational outcomes such as intensive leave, absenteeism, employee retention, innovation, and productivity. Not only does the lack of engagement negatively impact the organization, but the well-being of employees are at risk as well. And while there are many factors that drive engagement, trust is considered to be one of the major drivers of employee engagement, and more specifically, trust and direct leadership. So the findings of the study may be useful in addressing the gap in current research on engagement through identifying successful trust building strategies that laboratory managers can implement to cultivate the engagement of their employees. And laboratory managers must have the awareness that trust building strategies are useful in establishing and maintaining engagement among their employees in order to obtain and sustain positive organizational outcomes. So the conceptual framework I selected for my study is called the social exchange theory. And the concept of the social exchange theory was first introduced by Hammonds and has evolved over the years. And so the central theme of the theory is that the relationship between two parties center on the idea of reciprocity. And Hammonds himself posited that when one party rewards another party, the party issuing the reward expects an equal exchange. And trust is a crucial component in the exchange that takes place between a leader and their employee. and without it can result in attitudes and behaviors that are detrimental to organizational success. So the social exchange theory aligned with my studies focus through the exploration of trust building strategies used by laboratory managers to cultivate the engagement of their employees. And following the perspective of the theory, when employees perceive leadership as trustworthy, employees reciprocate through engaged behaviors. Next slide. Okay, so while there were multiple studies out there that I felt were relevant to my study, the four I have listed on this slide were the most relevant to my study. And I won't go into too much detail about them, but I just want to highlight things that I felt like were key to my study or related to my study. So the purpose of Bassett's study was to examine psychological safety and felt obligation as two psychological mechanisms mediating the effect of trust and supervisor on job engagement. And they drew from two theories, and that was job engagement and the social exchange theory. And so this study illustrated the importance of trust and supervisor in promoting employee job engagement, and in organizations, the importance of theory-based approach and understanding the trust engagement relationships between supervisors and employees. So Osborne and Hammond explored strategies that some communication business leaders use to engage their employees, and their findings supported my own in that their findings revealed that communication business leaders must understand the need for autonomy, intrinsic rewards, and influence to achieve employee engagement, which were some of the things that came up in conversation with my participants. They also highlighted the importance of building trust as a way to build employee engagement. So the purpose of SAC's study was to identify the main barriers that make it difficult to translate employee engagement research into practice and to offer solutions to overcome those barriers. So SAC's highlighted in their study that several variables are important for driving engagement, but specifically justice and trust were one of the main drivers of engagement. And also he listed that trust perceptions was listed as a predictor of job engagement. So I felt that was important. And then Zach, he described the key factors that can help to promote trust within organizations. And a model was provided on how to intervene in organizations to increase trust, and real organizational examples are used to show how various companies have done this. Zach's analysis demonstrated that organizations that sustain a high level of trust have sustainability, greater engagement by colleagues, which has been measured in multiple ways. And this indicated that organizational trust should be considered as a valuable asset that can be measured and managed to sustain competitive advantage over competition or other rivals. They were able to provide insight about specific practices and behaviors that can directly improve organizational performance by nurturing a culture of trust. Okay, next slide. So first I want to start, introduce my research question, and that was, what strategies do laboratory managers use to build trusting relationships that cultivate the engagement of laboratory employees? So for my procedure, I conducted semi-structured interviews and reviewed relevant public organizational documents on employee engagement. I used an interview protocol as a guidance tool throughout the interview process as well. And so the interview times range from 10 to 30 minutes in length. And during the interview process, the participants responded to a preset of open-ended questions regarding their experiences with implementing trust building strategies to build engagement of their employees that they manage. And I recorded the interviews, of course, using a audio recording device, so I could later transcribe my conversations that I had with my participants. And like I mentioned before, I also reviewed public organizational documents, and that's such as like job descriptions and qualifications, news highlights, employee testimonials, annual reports, mission statements, and company policies. As for my participants, I chose a purposeful sampling method for selecting participants, and that's just simply identifying and selecting information-rich cases based on the phenomenon of interest. So the participant population came from 5 different organizations that had laboratories, and the target population consisted of 5 laboratory managers who managed laboratory employees specifically. And the laboratory managers selected for the study were required to have successfully implemented trust building strategies to build the engagement of their employees. So following my interviews, I transcribed my interviews using a transcription software. And then I conducted my data analysis using both manual and using a computer assisted data analysis software, which was MaxQDA. And I used that to pretty much organize and assign codes to my data. And then after that, I manually arranged my codes into themes. And any codes that didn't relate to themes were discarded. So I verified the generated themes by correlating them with my research question, my conceptual framework, and previous research. And after interpreting the data, I invited participants to engage in a member checking process, which involved me presenting my interpretation of their responses to them, and just to confirm the accuracy of my interpretations. Next slide. Okay, so now I want to discuss my findings. Okay, so after completing my data analysis, I generated the following things: effective communication and effective leadership behaviors. So laboratory managers found that when communication between them and their employees were effective, they exhibited behaviors associated with employee engagement. So managers found that trust within their relationship with their employees was strengthened when the communication is honest, open, transparent, strong, continuous. And the social exchanges that take place between managers and their subordinates center around the idea of reciprocity. And interestingly enough, when the laboratory managers used their communication strategies, what they found was that employees would mirror those same behaviors in response. And the employees' communication behaviors signified to management that their trust building strategies were effective in building engagement with their employees. And through further analysis, I identified 2 sub-themes, which was transparency and open work dialogue. The first sub-theme identified was transparency, and transparency is just the degree to which leadership openly divulges information and presents themselves as honest and true, and allows space for others to be comfortable expressing their challenges, ideas, and opinions. So some participants use transparency as strategies to build trusting relationships with their employees, while others view transparency of employees as a determinant of the effectiveness of their trust building strategies that they implemented. The second sub-theme that I found centered around management facilitating open, continuous dialogue with their employees. And the open dialogue includes frequent communication, management actively listening to their employees, and also them receiving and encouraging feedback from their employees. So when there is an open dialogue and that's continuous, trust is established. And a significant aspect of ensuring an open work dialogue within the workplace is receiving and providing feedback, and creating a safe space for employees to provide feedback on leadership, the work environment, and decisions that impact them is necessary. Feedback is integral in establishing a culture of trust. So when trust is present in the workplace, employees are more likely to display engaged behaviors. So the second thing generated during the analysis process was effective leadership behaviors. And leadership behavior significantly impacts building trust and ultimately employee engagement. So the laboratory managers revealed that when they displayed positive leadership behaviors, employees tended to respond with engaged behaviors. And following the social exchange theory, I found that when laboratory managers displayed positive behaviors, employees reciprocated with those positive behaviors as well. And during the data analysis, I further grouped those codes into sub-themes, which are lead by example, provide support, and leadership characteristics. And a shared leadership behavior mentioned by the participants for building trusting relationships was leading by example. And leading by example just simply means that leadership must first exhibit behaviors they want to see in their employees. And I found that managers use leading by example as a strategy to build trusting relationships with their employees. Some of those strategies included things like being self-accountable, extending trust first to their employees, commitment to their own work, and displaying trustworthy behaviors. And as a result of managers leading by example, employees' behaviors reflected the same, such as holding themselves accountable, increased work commitment, increased work engagement, and increased camaraderie around amongst those on the team. So participants emphasized the importance of providing support to employees as a means of building trust. And when leaders create an environment where employees feel supported, their engagement is positively impacted. So when leadership shows support to their employees, they build trusting relationships with their employees. And more specifically, support from managers will ultimately result in engaged behaviors from employees. I found that some of the strategies used by laboratory managers centered on their approach to leadership. So leadership characteristics are necessary for trust to exist in the manager-subordinate relationship. An example of managers' approach to leadership is when they exhibit a caring leadership style and that they actively listen to their employees, make them feel comfortable with being vulnerable, and then while also showing their own vulnerabilities as a leader. So another example is to not approach leadership in a strict, controlling, domineering, or commanding way. And as a result, management noticed enhanced interactions between themselves and their employees. And employees exhibited behaviors that reflect active engagement, such as increased motivation. And leadership characteristics are necessary in building trust. And consequently, the trust established from leadership displaying certain characteristics results in employees displaying engaged behaviors. Next slide. Okay, so through data analysis, I found that employees display engaged behaviors when leadership exhibit behaviors related to effective communication and effective leadership behaviors. Such behaviors can be used by leadership to build trusting relationships with their employees, which aid in cultivating engagement. Employee engagement is a continuous challenge that is faced by organizational leaders and has outcomes that impact the success of the organization. And when an organization has an engaged workforce, they influence positive outcomes at an individual level and at an organizational level, such as gaining competitive advantage, increased profitability, decrease in absenteeism, decreased turnover intentions, higher productivity, increased motivation, and a higher work satisfaction, for example. So laboratory managers revealed that when they display trustworthy behaviors and communication styles, trust is evident in their relationships with their employees, and employees respond by exhibiting engaged behaviors. So the main limitation of the study was the target population. And the target population was limited to the perspective of laboratory managers and excluded the employee's perspective on the phenomenon under study. While the geographic location and industries varied, other types of management were not included in this study. And due to the target population and limitations, the findings of the study uh, may not be generalizable to all management populations. And so there are 3 recommendations for action that I identified in my study. The first being, I recommend that organizational leaders incorporate trust building strategies that center on effective leadership behaviors and effective communication with leadership training, development strategies, and policies. And incorporating these strategies may ensure that laboratory managers have the tools necessary to build trusting relationships with their employees and cultivate engagement. Second, I recommend that laboratory managers attend regular leadership trainings to refresh and reinforce effective leadership, communication, and behavior-based trust-building strategies to cultivate and maintain engagement among laboratory employees. Third, I recommend that laboratory managers and supervisors seek ongoing feedback from their employees on the effectiveness of their behaviors and communication styles, and even suggestions for improvement. And receiving feedback from employees will contribute to a higher trusting relationship between managers and employees, and allow laboratory managers to modify their trust building strategies in order to be more effective. So for my social change implications, so when organizational leaders excel in establishing and maintaining employee engagement, they are more likely to experience positive outcomes at both an individual and organizational level. A profitable organization will not only have the ability to maintain its current workforce, but also create job opportunities. And new job opportunities may result in lower unemployment rates within surrounding communities and positively impact the economic well-being of the community in which the organization operates. Profitable organizations may provide a level of financial security for their employees, allowing them to take care of their basic needs and pour their finances back into the economy, creating financial stability for their community. And additionally, engaged employees are more likely to involve themselves in community engagement initiatives, such as volunteering, for example. Next slide. So these are some of the references that I had throughout my presentation. And then the next slide. And so that's all I have for you today. And put it back in your hands, Brandon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Treadway, for sharing your presentation with us, as well as your knowledge and expertise. Really informative, I thought.
Thank you.
At this time, I know we have a few participants here. We will open it up for any questions that you may have. So we definitely invite you to either come off mute or type your questions into the chat box here. It looks like we may have one already in our chat. Let me see if I can pull this up for you.
Okay, so that's a good question. So the question is, were the participating laboratories in a specific city, state, or area of the country, or was it international? So all of the participating laboratories were within the US, and they weren't in specific regions. I had some in New York, I had some in Texas. It was pretty much all over the US, and it wasn't, like I said, specific to one region or location. And I also wanted to note too as well that I opened it up to the US because it helped with getting access to more participants. Because if I limited myself to like a certain state or region, that data collection process probably wouldn't have gone as smooth as it did. So, and for those who understand data collection, you know the struggle of getting participants at times.
Thanks for sharing. I actually have a question, not even necessarily a question myself, but I am interested in your study here. I know you focus specifically on laboratory management, but I'm definitely interested to see how that expands in the larger workforce in like a post-COVID environment. I know if COVID taught us anything, is that an employee is willing to leave a company for another one based on trust building, engagement. So I'm definitely interested to see if there are any correlations in a post-COVID environment and kind of where employees are now focused on when it comes to trust and engagement.
Yeah, and that's something definitely that I really want to look into, especially how and building trust and building engagement translate, especially with so many people moving into a virtual environment. Because I know that there's specific issues with that as well, because you're not face to face with people, and there can be some challenges when trying to maintain engagement when you're, even though it's virtual, it's still, there's still some distance there.
Right.
So, but there's definitely that's something that I definitely would be interested in looking into
Awesome.
in the
Thank you very
future.
much.
Hi, this is Cheryl Christensen. If there's still time, Brandon, I have a question or two.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, super. Wonderful presentation, Dr. Treadway. I think that the idea of trust in the workplace is really an important topic. And I'm wondering if if you found that any of the strategies um, that you shared seem to rise as perhaps the most important strategies for building trust, or if you
So,
found that, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead and finish your question. Sorry.
Oh, no, or did you find that really they all kind of presented equally?
So I did find that they presented equally, but one of the most reoccurring things that that kept coming up in conversation is leading by example. Um, and like I said in my presentation, management found that when they themselves, extended trust first, or they operated in ways that they wanted to see their employees operate, uh, they found that that was highly effective as well, because they started to see their employees display those same behaviors as they were displaying.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that. So I think we realize that it can take a lot longer to build trust than it can to destroy trust. And so I realized what the focus of your research was on, but I'm wondering if any of your participants spoke at all to some of the challenges they had experienced or their thoughts around how to rebuild trust. Did that come up in any way?
So I actually had one participant who just we discussed it was more challenging to build trust with newer employees compared to employees who had been there for a while and establishing relationships. So they did find that it was more challenging to, like I said, any new employees that were on board, it is a little bit more challenging to establish trust with them, because you have to go through the process of building that relationship with them in order to establish some level of trust. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. And in terms of your demographics, did you happen to mention what the age ranges were? And the reason why I'm asking that, and kind of this kind of goes to, I think it was Brandon's point about COVID, but one of the things we've been seeing in the literature also is some pretty significant generational differences in how these generations are engaging with work and what their expectations are. So were you noticing anything like that popping
So
up?
I didn't ask them their ages or anything specific like that. No, I didn't.
That's okay. Thank you. This was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christensen. That was a great question, great dialogue. At this time, is there any final remarks you'd like to offer, Dr. Treadway?
Well, yes.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering, what are your next steps? I mean, I don't know exactly when you graduated, so I'm just wondering, how are you disseminating this information? Are you publishing? Are you presenting outside of Walden? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I actually finished up in December of 2021, which is a great Christmas gift for me. But I published my study in January of this year. But this is my first time presenting my research outside of you know, the actual class environment.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I really encourage you to consider presenting. So I actually teach for the PhD in management program, so I'm just kind of on the other side of the fence from the DVA. But if you haven't considered it, maybe the Academy of Management. There are also some regional affiliations with the Academy of Management, for example, the Western Academy of Management. So I really encourage you to get the word out.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I was trying to write that down real quick.
I'm not sure where you are located physically, but yeah, you can just do a Google search, or Dr. Washington can probably, if you're still in contact with him, give you some really good suggestions too.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that.
And it looks like we have a question in the chat from Dr. Shannon Smith. What inspired your topic? What led you to choose this topic?
Yeah, so after graduating undergrad, I actually, for about 10 years, I've worked in laboratory environments most of my career, and I've been in different industries. And I was like, okay, so what is an issue that I've been noticing amongst, with myself and with other people in the labs that I've engaged with? And engagement has been an issue with every environment. And I was thinking, okay, so what do I feel or notice that is causing disengagement with employees? And I know for myself and as well as other employees that I've talked to, they didn't trust their leadership, their direct leadership. And, they didn't trust that they had their best interest at heart. And so that was something that I noticed, in my own professional career, as well as, like I said, observing other people that I've worked with in these lab settings over the years.
Fascinating. Thank you for that. All right. Are there any other questions in the chat or audio wise that anyone would like to ask? Otherwise, once again, thank you again for sharing your experiences and your project with us. This was a really good conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great job.
I really appreciate it.